Tonight, I want to talk about SU carburetors and the secrets of SU carburetors. It's like there aren't so many secrets, okay? But that seems to bring in the people. So the function of the carburetor is to evaporate gasoline, okay? It evaporates gasoline by vacuum. You've got to get gasoline from a liquid form into a gas form for it to combust. There's no problem getting gasoline into the airflow. You can put a garden hose in there. It's not the problem getting the gasoline in, it's a problem getting the air in. And the more air that gets into the cylinder, the more powerful the engine is. Once you've extracted every little bit of pressure that you can from atmospheric pressure, 14 pounds per square inch, then you buy the supercharger and force air into the cylinder. Okay, so that's it. All has to do with flow, airflow. So why not just put a bigger carburetor on the car? Well, you can do that, but some of the fun of this is getting more power out of what appears to be an original carburetor. So on SU carburetors, they start very, very small indeed. The H1 carburetor is 1 1/8. That's where the one comes from, 1/8. 1 1/8 in diameter. It's a little tiny thing that looks like it goes on a lawnmower. So those are on Bug-Eye Sprites. And then you got H2s or HS2s that go on midgets and T-types, TDs, TCs. And you get H4s, which is 1 4/8, 1.5 inch carburetors that go onto the MGBs. And then HS6s, 1 6/8 or 1 3/4 inch. So Volvos, which got an 1800 engine, that B1800 engine is a real nice engine. It looks just like an MGB engine except backwards. Doesn't use a chain, uses a gear up front, but geez, for all the world, it's the same engine. Looks like it. They use 1 3/4 carburetors, but you don't need an 1 3/4 carburetor on an MGB. You can put one on, but the danger in putting on too large of a carburetor is you lose your ability to run the car well at low speed. The function of the carburetor is to evaporate the gasoline, and that's done by, I happen to have an example here. So right down the middle, this is Stromberg. Stromberg, it's the same, it's a CD carburetor, stands for constant depression. If you got a Stromberg, you know what constant depression is. And anyway, down in the middle there, not the big hole, or the big brass hole right in the middle of the throat there is the jet. And air going across that jet pulls gasoline. In fact, there's no such thing as pulling. There's no such thing as vacuum. It's only pressure, but it's easier if we talk about vacuum. So the air going through here, going through the carburetor on the bottom of the air piston, then creates vacuum and sucks the gasoline out of the jet. So the higher the needle is pulled out of the jet, the higher the needle's pulled out. I have a needle here. Here's I had a needle here. I'll find it here. Here's the needle. The needle has a taper to it. You can see that it's maybe wider at the top than it is at the bottom. And there are, well, I don't know, what do you suppose there are, Fred? 500 different needles?
Probably, yeah.
At least for all kinds of cars. The Austin A40, for Reinouts car, the 1931 midget, for a Volvo, for a Rolls Royce. I mean, there are just a jillion needles, and every needle's been designed to fit a certain application, whether that's for power, speed, emissions, or an attempt to do all three. And you wonder if the needle that was designed like an ES needle for an SU carburetor for a 1950 MGTD, you wonder for using pool gasoline, about 80 octane gasoline, you wonder if that needle is still good enough for today's fuel. That's a big question. There is a book. I should have brought that book along with me. Modern, you got that? There we go. Yep. Classic. What's that? Classic Engines, Modern Fuel. And the guy that wrote it owns a TC? Is that
TCTD, yeah.
yeah, yep. So it's right down our alley. It's a really nice book. Although the mechanical way the book is laid out, is it what's the print real small or something? I remember I had a real hard time trying to read it. That was me. Um, and you can't
Not
get
too bad. Not too
it,
bad.
he can't get it on Audible yet, you know. Um, anyway, there's a jillion different needles. Are the needles in the book the ones you should use? Joe Curto is the carburetor king, and if you have some different kind of stuff going on in your engine, he can advise you pretty well about what you might want to have. You got an MGB engine bored out to 2 liters, and you got some exotic camshaft in it, and you only drive it above 60 miles an hour. You know, Joe can help you out with what's going on the as far as the needle goes. But we're here to talk about how to get the air through this carburetor quickly, efficiently. So I'll talk about one thing and I'll let Fred talk about another, although I've got some fun stuff. So um, uh, from 1968 through 1980 is a spring-loaded valve. Here's the spring-loaded valve, and that in the throttle disc. So when you are running down the road and the throttle disc is partway open, and then you all of a sudden let off on the throttle, this guy closes. And he closes so much that not enough air is able to get through the carburetor to get into the engine to even combust. And you're sending unburned gasoline down the tailpipe. Government doesn't like that. So they want to slow deceleration. So they ordered the companies to figure out how to do it. This is how they did it. They put this button in there, and when the manifold vacuum gets great enough, that button pulls open and slows deceleration. So your 1968 MGB just doesn't behave like a 1967 when you take your foot off the gas. When you're driving down the road in most MGs, a T-type or an A or early B, and you take your foot off the gas, your chin touches the steering wheel. I mean, the car suddenly slows down. This makes the slowdown a whole lot less. Look at the interference that this has. I mean, we've got a cross section here. Here we got a cross section of 1.75 inches, because this is a CD 175, 1.75 inches, same as an HS6 carburetor. But that cross section of that spring is so great that a lot of people choose to remove that throttle disc, whether it's on an Stromberg or an SU. This one has been at least soldered shut. You can see the solder on the back side of it there. So if you want to solder it shut to speed deceleration, you just hold this guy open and put some flux in on at the base of that spring, heat it up with a propane torch from the underside, flow some solder in there. It shuts this valve, and now when you close the butterfly, the car slows right down, makes the car more responsive. But in an SU, you can take, oh, here I've got the two SU discs here. Here's a disc, an SU disc out of an HS or an HIF, and it's got the valve. Maybe if I get this here correctly, you can see the valve open. See, there we go. See the valve open. Just got some slots on the backside for the air to go through. The cool thing is to pull this out because it interferes with the air that's trying to go through. It's got this great big cross section there, and replace it with just a plain old throttle disc, which are now, these things are what, $30 a piece new or something. It's just awful. Um, when you put this throttle disc into the throttle shaft, which I will try to do here, so that it's imagine that it's on the inside of the car. You got little tiny screws in here. I think those are 5BA, I think, and AUC 1358s. And you splay the back of them so they don't get out of the way. But they stand proud. I don't have one here to show you, but those screw heads stand proud of the shaft and interfere with the airflow that goes through it, as do the tails on the other side, catches the air, causes it to swirl. So sometimes people will shave down the head. You don't want to get these too small. You don't want them to fall out because then they're going to go into the cylinder, and you don't want the screws to break because then the throttle just gets misplaced, and the carburetor is jammed open. You can't get it to feather back down to idle. So you don't want to take too much of the screw off, but you can massage the top of them with your Dremel, and some people solder them, put them in place and solder. That's fine until you want to take them back out again, and then it's a bugger. But you can do that to smooth it down, and then in the direction of airflow, if the air is coming at this, obviously the throttle disc has a certain thickness to it. You can, if you're very careful with your Dremel tool and you got nothing else in your life to do, you can feather this into a knife edge. Now, the back side, apparently, the lee side doesn't make any difference, but the front side, the wayward side, is it's cool to do that. Other people take this shaft itself and cut away half the shaft to reduce the size. I don't have the calculations here in front of me, but this is a 5/16 shaft and it's an inch and a half wide. And so when it's flat out, when you're running down the road flat out, there's interference to the air going through the carburetor. So the whole goal is to reduce the air and the turbulence to the air so the air can slip through the carburetor with little restriction. So, Fred, is that a satisfactory explanation? What else?
Well, that's part of it.
Okay.
There's ongoing discussion as to whether you want to eliminate all turbulence or whether you want to have some turbulence to help mix that fuel and air together before it gets to the chamber. And then when you ignite that air fuel mixture, it has a burn across the surface of the piston, forcing it down, of course. And that's what this book talks about, is how to get the best mixture for it to burn efficiently and create the most power. So you showed in your pictures that you can port match the intake manifold to the cylinder head. You can grind away the passages to make them smoother, but you don't want to grind away too much. First of all, you don't want to run into a water passage, but also you still want some roughness there to create a little bit of turbulence for it to mix the fuel as it goes into the cylinder.
So you're talking about the inlet, and you're talking about the distance between the carburetor and the valve. And
Yes.
and you're saying that porting is good, but maybe polishing, you don't want to have
You
it like a mirror because
you
the
can do a certain amount of porting and a certain amount of polishing, but not all the way through and not too much.
so it's if the walls are too smooth between the carburetor and the inlet valve, if they're too small, the gasoline will fall out of suspension
Yeah.
out at those points, and so you don't have a good mixture, consistent mixture of air fuel going in. Plus, you get puddles of gasoline at different times. That's one of the problems with the downdraft Weber and that log manifold. You've got the Weber. Imagine my coffee cup is the Weber, so the air is going straight down through straight down through the carburetor, and then it comes to a manifold where it has to take a 90 degree, and then it's got another 90 degree, and so you've got a lot of stalled air. And during idle, the gasoline will fall out of suspension, which when you put your foot to the floor causes the car to respond with a ooh right in the beginning. Ooh, and then it takes off like a rocket. That's that Weber stall. And the stall is caused by the gasoline falling out of suspension and puddling. And so when you put your foot down, all that gasoline gets sucked into the cylinder, and it's too rich. It won't combust because it's too rich. It quickly sorts itself out, but that's that Weber stall.
Let's talk about a couple other things on the input side. So you and I had talked about it in email, but on the piston, well, that's another thing.
Oh, okay. All right.
We're talking about the internals of the carburetor at this point.
Okay.
So the piston, oh, let me get that. Okay. So you can bevel the front and back edges of the piston. So as it rises off the bridge of the carburetor, it allows more air to kind of slip through, and along with your changes to the throttle
So
shaft and
you're
blade.
you're talking about the forward side, which is the not the side which has got the holes, but the other side here with
Yeah.
the notch. And you're talking about angling it
Yeah.
round. And what do you think? A quarter inch kind of radius? I mean, we're not talking about a ramp that with a radius the same as a golf ball.
Yeah,
Or are we?
basically just I've only seen pictures of it. I've never actually done it, because, as far as I'm concerned, the factory did a pretty good job of designing the flow of the engine and the carburetor and everything. And I just make them stock and they they run fine. But now you start modifying the engine, putting in bigger engines, all these other things. Then you need to start thinking about what your carburation is going to do. And if you're racing, obviously you have to do a lot more with that stuff.
Racing,
How much of an increase in horsepower does this really all create?
nothing. You can't measure it.
That's kind of what I agree with Fred then. Just if you put it back together stock, it's about as good as it's going to get, right?
Yes.
But there's one thing on the MGA. I haven't tried this on a T series, but MGA, John just held up his MGB base of a air filter. It has a little
Radius.
velocity stack built in. So this is called a venturi in a carburetor, and this just helps squeeze the air through the carburetor faster and creates more flow.
So asking what difference does it make? My associate, Carl Heidemann, Eclectic Motor Works. Carl's written a lot for Grassroot Motorsports. When he was in college, he worked for me. And he's just about ready to retire from his job at Hope College. But he's got a shop, and he's done a lot of pulls on a dynamometer at Baker Engineering in Grand Haven, Michigan, on their rolling accelerometer stand. He's done 1,200 pulls with everything you can imagine changed on the car as much as he could do. Make a couple of runs, get the car off, change the cylinder head, put a different cylinder head on it, put that on, try that. Try big bore exhaust, great big bore exhaust versus a little tiny exhaust. You think, oh my gosh, that's got to be good for a couple of horsepower. Nothing. No change in the output. But this guy, this 2 horsepower. 2 horsepower on what? The most that we usually got on an MGB, I want to say is about 60 horsepower at the rear wheels. Okay, is that all? Yep, that's all. But if you take these off, you lose 2 horsepower. 2 on 60s, almost 10%. And you can put these into the back of the air cleaners on an MGA. Say it's the same setup, it's the same gasket. One's an HS4. This is
That's what I have here is one that's been bored out to go into the inside of the air filter. And the backside, you need an end mill in your drill press or whatever to relieve these, because it sits on top of these like welded on or pinched on stands in the side of the carburetor. Otherwise, it doesn't sit flush with the surface. So you have to do both these operations.
So what I did was to take the back can of my MGA air cleaner and just chuck it up in the lathe. Got a lathe, I can cut it that big. And I cut this big of a hole out of it. And I use it with a black spacer, just like an MGB, and I
Yeah.
put my MGA air cleaner on top of that, got rid of those horrid studs.
Yeah.
Got got some distance tubes to fit it in there and put a bolt through and then put the hoop on the backside, that AHH, I don't know,
Yeah.
9943, something or other, that hoop that goes on the back. And I don't have any trouble getting those air cleaners on and off. MGAs are so horrible. Those air cleaners are the only one worse is the TF. So,
But lots of ways to do it.
Fred, you're muted, but you can unmute yourself again, Fred. I had some background there.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's one for the MGC, which is a lot larger, but the idea here is the same. And I think if you got a TR6 or a Healy that doesn't have these stub stacks, I mean, when you buy a stub stack from Moss, you can go blow through 50, $60, can't you? Just like in an instant.
Like this one.
Yep.
Oh yeah, but I meant the little tiny
Oh, yeah.
ones. But how much are those great big ones?
Yeah. Ryan has a question.
Yeah, it's not a question, more of a comment. There's a member of mine in the Philly MG Club who actually went out and came up with a way to 3D print plastic stub stacks, and he's actually used them. And I'm looking to either have him print me a pair or print myself a pair, and kind of experiment with what they look like in my midget. So and potentially my bug eye as well, just to see what, I don't expect it'll be anything, but we'll give it a shot and we'll see how it looks. So
there is science. I don't know if there's science or just a lot of testing to figure out what size to make this. It isn't just, it is, I mean, any roll is better than no roll, but exactly how it's configured. So what I did on my MGA is I don't have this here, but I drilled two little pins in the backside, two little holes, 1/8 inch holes, and then put it up against my MGA body, tapped it so I can mark it, drilled into my MGA body so that this fit into one of my MGA carburetors. And I took the carburetor and this and spun it up on the lathe and finished the inside. So that transition from here to the carburetor is flawless. I mean, it's just seamless. Sometimes the gasket that you buy is smaller than this, so the air comes in and
Yeah.
hits a wall and has to jump around the wall. You want this nice and smooth going
Yeah.
through
That's
here.
that port matching.
You port matching, exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Something else that has been said, particularly for these types of velocity stacks, is obviously if you're racing, you don't run any air filters. You just go flat out and rebuild the engine at the end of the day or whatever you do. But I used to run these Piper socks on there. They're made for motorcycles, but got these from Summit Racing. But they say you put the velocity stack on there, but then you put the sock on there, and it totally negates the stack.
Yeah, what's your offhand comment about those fresh air boxes and fresh air tubes up to the carburetors?
They say that getting the cold air up there sooner, rather than letting the engine heat it up or whatever, is better. But I don't have any experience with if they add any, value.
I don't have any experience. I've got no data at all, but I think it's sort of like a real good idea, but I just don't understand how it could possibly work. Not when you put all the air into a tube like this, especially if the tube is corrugated. Corrugated. It's like, wait a minute. The air wants a nice smooth flow there. I maybe on a race car, maybe it's measurable, but I would think if anything, it's going to
I wonder,
limit.
did your friend who did the testing test air
I
boxes?
don't remember if Carl did those tests or not.
There's probably data out there. Somebody could look and say, yes, this makes a 1% horsepower difference or
So,
whatever.
so do you,
I can
do
add some
you,
stuff to that.
this is Judd, you see that the tube from the front of the MGA to in front of the carburetors to channel nice fresh air is just for looks and doesn't really do
No,
anything?
no. That I'm talking about one that's actually attached to the carburetor.
Yeah, I understand that, but the B doesn't have that tube. The TD doesn't have that tube. Only the MGA, so far as I know. Does anybody think it's truly functional?
Well, I can tell you, I've made my own air box in a 4-inch hose. It's got to be 4 inch, so it means you got to cut a hole next to the radiator. And when I was up in Colorado one time, my car wouldn't idle on not even 500 RPM. Got out on the highway about 60, 70 miles an hour, put it in neutral, and my car is idling at almost 1500 from the air pushing through it. When you're driving around the city, it doesn't probably make any difference at all. But on the highway, my gas mileage is maybe a couple miles per gallon better. And at these prices, that's not bad. So as far as how much power it adds, I have no idea. But it's got to, you're right about that one thing. That tube has got to be smooth on the inside.
Thank you.
Otherwise, and then I put a K&N type filter on the end of it too.
Doesn't that have to
Ron, can I
do
break?
with the mixture leaning out because you got all that air in there?
I don't think so because that's the air coming up against the carburetor. It's not on the backside. And even if it's supercharged, it's still pushing the air through the carburetor, and the air piston is going to rise or fall depending on how much air is going through the carburetor, and that stabilizes that mixture of 14-1.
There is some adjustments to be made based upon how much air you have going through there. You may need a leaner or richer needle. This is one of the things that you need to discuss with somebody like Joe Curto, as John pointed out. And also, you can certainly research online. There's lots and lots of information out there. Of course, half of it's bogus, so don't believe everything you see on the internet. But there's a lot of good data out there too.
Yeah, Joe Curto sent me richer needles. Yeah, and
Okay.
I no scientific way I can tell how much difference it makes. But my car runs great. I get great mileage, and it just keeps on going. So, but he did recommend the richer needles.
The other thing is, of course, setting up your float bowl level correctly. That's very important for that flow of the fuel coming out of the needle seat. And the depth of the needle seat is also extremely important. I found with a cross-flow aluminum head with dual HS6s on it that the needle seat had to be about 100 thousandths below the bridge, whereas typically on the MGA or MGBs, I set it about 70 thousandths, just a tiny bit rich, but the cars love it. Now, HIFs, they like to be a little bit richer, like about 80 thousandths, but I don't know why.
Part of that is depending on where the fuel level is. So since you always show this upside down, this guy, the higher he goes, the lower the fuel level is, right? So you can, by reading the spark plugs after a run, adjust your float height higher or lower, to make more gasoline available or not at the jet. Another thing on this, there are two different types of float. Well, there's the new Joe Kurt. I don't know if Joe makes those or his, but the new propylene, those black floats, those are nice and those are really easy to adjust. Prior to those, you've got this style with a metal hinge, that you can adjust. And then there's also this style that has no metal hinge at all. And to adjust this, you either have to put shims underneath the needle and underneath the needle and seat, underneath that AUD 9096 needle and seat down inside here, or you've got to take a file and file off some of the top to change where this sits up and down. And the workshop manual asks you to get this gap. This is, obviously HS carburetors, but to get the gap between the inside and the bottom of the float, which is really the top of the float, 1/8 to 3/16. What's really important in all of this, if you're running two carburetors or three, is that every carburetor is doing exactly the same as the other. So if the float height is 3/16 on one, it better be 3/16 on the other, right? Because you're looking for consistency. The power of the engine relies on consistency. It relies on lots of stuff, but you can't have two cylinders fighting two other cylinders. So when you go to you're doing your tune-up, you take your damper off the top and you make sure the damper is assembled correctly. How do you know it's assembled correctly? We'll look at it. It's a little hydraulic valve in there. Some of them have longer barrels, some of them have shorter barrels. They're marked on the top, AUC 8113, AUC 8114, and I don't know, 8106 or something I just saw in some SUs. What's your feeling about these dampers, Fred? The difference between them?
As I recall, the MGAs 1500s had a longer damper. Then when they went to the 1600, I believe that's when they went to a shorter damper. Don't know exactly why, but then they carried that through the MGBs.
Okay. So as the air piston follows airflow and goes up and down during operation of the car. I mean, at idle, you're way down almost at the bottom, and at high speed, you're most of the way up. There's oil down inside the dash pot, and this is a hydraulic valve here that allows the oil to pass by when you're pulling it up. There's no restriction to pulling it up, but pushing it back down, the valve made up by a couple of these brass pieces closes, and this piston rises with extreme difficulty. Okay, that's the accelerator pump inside our carburetors. I mean, SUs don't have an accelerator pump, but you must have a rich mixture right at the point of acceleration. So that's how that's done by instead of the air piston rising as quickly as it might as you accelerate, it slows deceleration. Therefore, the area underneath the piston that the air is going through, like this, that area down here is smaller than it normally would be, which increases the vacuum at the jet and draws out more fuel. So it's imperative that you've got some kind of oil in here. Rhino's carburetors don't have dampers in them. They didn't have these until later. But we picked these up, must be about 1930, around the TB time. Prior to that, I don't know. They hadn't either hazarded upon this as a solution to making the mixture richer at acceleration. I don't know. Anyway, how many times since your car was made is this air piston gone up and down on the dash on the damper? 3, 30, 300, 3,000, 30,000, 300,000, 3 million?
Millions.
A lot. And what happens down inside here? This is brass. This has got oil in it. There's dirt in here. Shouldn't be any dirt, but there's always dirt. So the dirt gets embedded in the brass because that's softer than the steel, and it opens up. Instead of that cylinder being straight up and down, it bulges it where the wear is. So to account for that, I propose that everyone uses thick oil in your dashpot. Try it. If you don't like it, pour it out and put the old stuff back in. But it's not automatic transmission fluid. It is on Volvos, but maybe it's colder in Sweden. I don't know. Maybe it's harder for those pistons to go up. Our workshop manual says use engine oil. I like to use 90 weight. Glenn, talk to anybody in the trade. Well, the viscosity charts on a gear lube and motor oil are different. Viscosity changes, and really 90 weight is the same as 2050. It's not. Feel it. It's thicker. I have yet to experiment and fill up a glass tube and count how many seconds it takes for a ball to fall down through the oil, but I know 90 weight's thicker, and I always use 90 weight gear oil inside here, always, and it gives you better acceleration. Try it. If you don't like it, get rid of it. Put back in whatever you were using. I found brake fluid in them once, and streaks on the underside of the bonnet where the brake fluid squirted out and taken the paint off.
I've used the 90 weight since I talked to you about it years ago, and it's great. And you don't lose any. I check it all the time. If I lose it's just a minuscule amount, and
It
carburetors work good.
goes nowhere, unlike the Stromberg, because down through the top of the Stromberg, that's where you make the adjustment to raise or lower the needle in relation to the fixed jet. And therefore there's an O-ring in there, and that O-ring, there's an enormous vacuum underneath that air piston, enormous, and it sucks the oil out of that chamber. So Strombergs always need oil. So the thicker oil you can put in there, the longer it's going to last. And for those that are still running Strombergs, you don't have to carry the oil with you. You do have to forage in the trash at the gas station. But if you just look in the trash container, there's a quart of oil in there that someone's been in a hurry, and it's still got just enough to fill up your dashpot on your Stromberg. So fill up your gas tank, and the same you're doing that. Feasel around inside the trash can there and get out some oil and pour that into your carburetor, or carry some stuff with you. Moss sells these cute little bottles. You have one of those, Fred? One of those cute little SU.
I didn't bring one up with me, but it's like buying water. It's like $10 a gallon or something.
So, it's got SU oil in it, right? I said, I just pour that stuff in your engine, and fill up that cute little bottle with 90 weight, and then you got the oil to do it.
I got from
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'll cut Bob and Gloria off for a minute. Who else is talking?
Okay, I just wanted to ask, in order to change the oil in your SU carburetor, you have to take it off and dump it out?
Well, that's the easier way, unless you've got a long, like a long spout on your oil can. You can stick it way down inside and glug, 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 and force, the old oil out the top. Makes a mess. On the other hand, all that oil washing over the top of the SUs lubricates all the linkage, so.
Okay, I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
I was gonna say I got a little can about this big from Harbor Freight. It's got a hand pump on it and a long snout, and I just I put it on a magnet under the hood. I hardly ever have to use it, but it's there.
Well, the oil, it can't go anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. So what happens, if people with SU carburetors, they say, "Oh, I have to fill that up all the time." Well, if you fill it up, yeah, if that's what you're going for, but don't go for that. That's too high. When you fill it all the way up, as soon as it begins to work, and this comes up, that cylinder, the effective capacity of that cylinder is less, and it squirts oil out the hole here on the top, And then you go to check it next time and say, oh, it's not full. So you fill it back up and it squirts out again. As long as when you're putting this back into the top of the suction chamber, you get to about right here, just a quarter of an inch above. As long as you can feel restriction from the oil up there, you know you're home free. So there are two types of dampers. Now these later model
Excuse me, quick
dampers.
question.
Yeah,
Have you had any experience with using hydraulic jack oil with the SUs?
that would be, again, that's a viscosity. That would work okay. It depends on the viscosity. What I want is thicker oil in there.
Right,
Okay.
it's pretty thick.
Okay.
It's kind of like you put Marvel Mystery oil, but you mix it with 90 weight. It's both thick and thin.
I have no experience doing that. And it's really hard. It's like, how would you decide which is better? So you got to go out on the same time at the same day. So you got to make a run, some kind of run where you've got a lot of acceleration, so you can test it and try it and just get a gut for how it's feeling. I mean, you can't use a stopwatch. I mean, there's nothing you can do. And then come back and empty that oil out and put something else in and go, oh yeah, oh, there is a difference, I mean, but that seat of your pants kind of stuff, and it's hard to tell. But if you can tell, leave it where it's best. But no problem using hydraulic fork oil or hydraulic jack oil. No, it's still oil. Okie doke. So anyway, I was starting to say that these guys all have a hole. You can see my eyeball through the hole there. And because as this comes up and down, the volume of this chamber, the dashpot increases and decreases as it's going up and down. And you've got to allow for the air to make its escape when the piston is going up and allow for air to come in when it's coming down. So after starting with the MGA in 1600, there's a hole in the damper. Prior to that, in the MGAs, there is no hole in the damper. Instead, there's a hole that's drilled in this boss. So those are the dustless carburetors. And if you look down inside, you can't see here anyway because it's too dark, but if you look down inside, and if you can see a hole that's drilled through this from the dashpot to the inside chamber here, if there's a hole, that's for a dustless carburetor. And you must not have then a hole in the damper. You must have one hole, but you can't have two. If you have no holes, then as this thing is starting to come up, he's going to get air pressure in there and it's going to sit low, which is going to make you run rich. If there's two holes, then the air that's above the air piston, the air that's trapped up on the top side of here and above the piston, drawing this up, that air is going to be bled away by the hole going into the dashpot and into the top. The piston will sit low and it'll run rich. So just make sure that you have a hole, but not two. It's either in here or in here, but not neither.
One cautionary tale.
And not both. Yes.
Moss and probably other vendors sell a nice looking little brass MG emblem cap to go on there.
Yes.
And all of those that I've seen, I think, are not drilled. So if you're putting them onto a car that's supposed to have a hole in it, you need to drill a hole in it.
Thank you. Rob Clark makes those, Clark and Clark out of Holland, Michigan. And when he was setting up to make those, he asked me, he says, what thread is this? What thread is this? And I said, well, geez, I don't know. And we measured, it's 26 threads per inch. So it's British Standard brass. although I don't know the difference between British Standard Brass and British Standard Cycle, but it's 11/16. You cannot buy a tap or a die anywhere in the world off a shelf or out of someone's warehouse that's 11/16 British Standard Brass. You can get 3/4, you can get 5/8. You can't get 11/16. So anyway, it's not a proprietary thread, but almost. Another thing that happens, these dampers, the threads either get ruined up in the top of here or the threads get ruined on the plastic. And especially when it's cold and when those air pistons want to come up, and it's 5 degrees here today, and my late wife Carolyn and I drove an MGB GT every single day of the year, whether it was -5 or what. And so when you go to accelerate and this thing's coming up, man, this thing is fighting molasses. I mean, that piston came up really, really hard, a lot of force, and it would blow this out of the top, blow this guy out of the top of the suction chamber, and the threads get stripped. So if that happens, there is a washer that I don't know why, but there is a washer that is not here on the underside of this. Just take the washer out, and you get about another turn for the on the damper, and it won't pop out. Or you can get other dampers, but you can't get another suction chamber without going through a lot of hocus pocus. I want to explain that right now. So part of the tune-up is to cover up these two breather holes. These breather holes are in the back of the carburetor to allow the air vacuum that's underneath here to get moved up above to draw this piston up. So you take some masking tape and put it around here and cover this up so it cannot breathe through these holes. Then you turn the air piston upside down and you count the number of seconds. This is almost instantaneous because those holes are not blocked off. But normally the time it takes for this air piston to fall is around 5 seconds, around there, 3 to 5, 6 seconds. And since we want the engines to run consistently and have the same mixtures at the same times, we want to make sure that each air piston is acting as the other. In other words, if you tape up both of yours and turn them upside down, and one falls in 9 seconds, I won't wait the whole 9 seconds, but you know what I mean. It falls over 9 seconds, and the other one falls in 3 seconds. It means the one that's falling in 3 seconds is going to run richer than the one that's falling in 9. So you mix the air pistons back and forth, and you keep working them back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and spinning them and making sure they're clean and testing them until you're finally assured that they are as close as you can get them. Maybe you start off at 9 seconds and 3 seconds, and you switch them to a different, switch the pistons around in the suction chambers. And this time you get 4 and 5 seconds. So that's not the same, but it's a lot closer. And if those are the only suction chambers and air pistons you have, that's all you can do. So it's essential to have. I want to have this drop on my keyboard. It's essential to have these guys matched, that the drop is matched. In the very beginning, Judd's got his picture. What kind of carburetors are on that thing, Judd?
I had sent mine off after I'd done some work, and I borrowed from a club member who was rebuilding a TA.
Okay.
His, because we had an event coming up and I wanted to drive in it. And they fit, they run lovely. The linkage is different, so it's got a bunch of wire and twist ties and turnbuckles to make it work. And I drove it like that for about 2 weeks. But I had a comment and a question. A comment, you said that you blew the dampers out in cold weather. I tend to blow the dampers out on the TD when I do hard drives in hot weather. like going up the mountain and I'm running at, at 200,
Okay.
200 degrees, 210,
That's because
sometimes 220.
it's because this guy expands, right?
And
The
that's what I
aluminum
think it is. It just gets bigger.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So
And
now the
the damper doesn't get as big as fast or
mine
something.
are
Yeah.
brass, yours is plastic, but I'm
Yeah.
sure that you're right. There's a different coefficient of expansion there. But you, I didn't think you could swap the pistons in the domes. I thought they were all lapped and matched, and if you swapped them, you'd go to hell or something. I
You
don't know.
well, you will, but not you, because you have never swapped them. It is a DPO, right? And I let me tell you, I mean, and for doing this in the field for 50 years, these suction chambers look the same from 1956 through 1974 through 1980 in England. They look exactly the same. How would you tell one from the other? And some of them have got the holes drilled. So somebody was buffing them up on the buffer. One took off, it got dented. Let me tell you, this gets dented a little bit on the outside. It no longer works. And so he grabs another suction chamber, looked the same to him. Hell, he's got the wrong suction chambers on there. He's got one from an A and one from an HIF. So it's anything can happen. So that's why I'm telling you tomorrow. It's too late tonight, Judd, but tomorrow go out and take those suction, take the air pistons out and tape them up. Just you can do it with the needles in it, but boy, you'd better have your thumb underneath there because if these things drop out and the needle bends, it's then you got to call Joe Curto tomorrow.
John, can you do that test with the assembly inverted
Sure.
the other way?
Yeah.
So then it won't drop out and fall on the floor.
Yes. Yes. Most certainly. Most certainly.
That's
It's
the
harder
safer way.
because they're just you have to put it on a surface and lift it up, and I like to do them at the same time. So it's just like watching a guy who knows how to chop lettuce or something real fast, or a bartender who's got all the tricks. I take both of them and flip them upside down, and when I'm doing that with a customer close by, he'll put his hands out underneath. Good thing I don't drop them because that needle go right through his hand. But they get, oh my God, he's going to drop them. But I have my thumb on the underside. It's just I find it difficult to put them up and let both of them go at the same time because you end up shaking one and it falls over. And
Well, you could listen for a clunk maybe when
Sure.
it's finished.
but
Where's the spring? I mean,
okay, that's we're back to your picture there, Judd, because that I'd seen those, and so Judd's pistons are probably brass, and
they're heavy weighted.
they're really heavy. And then when you get the Bug Eye Sprite, those are aluminum with a disc of steel inside them. And then finally, they're aluminum with a spring on top. So you've got to have a certain amount of downward force. How do you get force? You get force with mass times gravity. That's the brass ones. Or in the case of the later ones, you cheat and you just put a spring up there, which is cheaper than making those nice brass pistons. So the spring goes inside. The springs should be the same length. I don't have any springs to show you. You bring any, Fred? You got any springs?
I didn't bring any up
Okay.
with me.
So sometimes you'll take these apart, and one spring is what you would consider to be the normal length, and the other one is stretched about 1.5 feet long, right? Because somebody down at the gas station trying to make the car run right thought if you stretched the spring, it would help.
So John, would you do the drop test with the spring or without?
Without.
Okay. Thank you.
No. You could do it with, but it would push it down a whole lot faster. And what you're checking for is the clearance between the inside diameter and the outside diameter. That's
these
the
Zoom
surface.
meetings, technical meetings. And I really wanted to listen to this. It's about tuning these old style carburetors.
So that's why I've got the mute all button. So anyway, we've got we've talked about these guys. We've talked about the hole up here at the top. We've talked about the dampers. The length of the barrel on the damper, I would think the longer the barrel, the more restriction there is to doing it, but you don't see the longer barrel on these pistons, except the earlier ones. And I think the MGCs, maybe because they're HS6 carburetors, maybe they're bigger. What else did I bring along? I brought along the floats. We talked about adjusting I didn't talk about the shaking float. See how these shake, this is the one with the metal hinge. These are real nice. There's nothing wrong with those. You can take the pin out and squeeze the hinge down with a pair of pliers and um, make it so it doesn't rock back and forth. But once it starts to rock too much back and forth, and we're on the edge here, then sometimes, not always, sometimes at a certain speed, when this is sitting inside the fluid and the engine's shaking and everything's shaking, this will get to wobbling back and forth, and the needle and seat will stick open. And you're driving along, and all of a sudden the car runs like crap, and you're smelling fuel because the carburetors are dumping fuel. It's running too rich. And you go, what's going on? And they change the RPM and it runs fine again. So I did notice that once a long time ago. So just make sure that these don't rock back and forth too much. You can get them too tight. I mean, you want them to absolutely fall. When you're checking Go ahead.
I was going to say that the pin that holds the float in place, some are brass and some are steel. And I've seen a lot of brass ones that are very, very badly worn. So you have to check those, make sure that that's not causing a wobble too.
Thank you. Thank you. You interrupted me. I was going to say something important. Oh yeah, there's a couple different types of needles and seats. The original ones had a steel cone on the top and a brass body, but any tiny piece of dirt in there would hold those things open and they'd leak. So the new and improved ones are the Viton tipped. They can't be neoprene tipped. They used to be neoprene tipped. Neoprene doesn't like the new gasoline. It fails. So you want Viton tipped needles and seats. In the meantime, the Gross family, Mr. Gross, he was in Connecticut or Massachusetts because Caroline used to write checks and talk to Mrs. Gross on the phone, Grose. They made a double ball needle and seat, which was just dynamite. But two things happened. One, we lost, or the formulation of the gasoline changed, and gasoline gets sticky now. Didn't used to get so sticky. And now the Gross jets are made in our favorite Asian country. So a combination of one or both of those things, there's more trouble. There used to be Gross jets were just the dynamite thing, but not anymore. Now it's the Viton tipped needles and seats. Almost all of them are okay. If you order them from Joe Curto, they're always okay. Sometimes the spring, see how this is spring loaded? Okay. Sometimes that spring is really weak and you let the float come up and it collapses. Well, you want to get that 1/8 to 3/16 in here, and you don't want it after it's collapsed. You want it as it shuts off the fuel flow. So sometimes you have to adjust it while holding this on an angle, and not having it all the way up. But those needles and seats aren't very good, especially if you've got some aftermarket fuel pump pushing out more than about 2.5 pounds, because it'll leak past the needle and seat.
John, I got the springs you were talking about.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. Yep. And there's what do you suppose there are, Fred? Maybe 4 of those springs, or are there a lot more?
Well, in this the book, they're talking about most of the MGs had red, and I believe that they were saying the MGs one of them was a blue one. Not sure which, but anyway, most of them are red. Apparently.
Those are color coded to give you the force,
Yeah.
3.5 ounces or something of force. An HIF carburetor, I just been talking to a guy in Florida. Oh, I love HIFs, he says. I said, well, you're talking to somebody who doesn't. Only because the HIF carburetor has got the float bowl on the bottom of the unit. like this. Like this has got the float bowl and integral float. That's why they're HIF, horizontal integral float, HIF. They got the float bowl on the bottom. In anything you have to do with the float bowl, you got to take the carburetor off the car. Now you get used to that, but boy, it can be those. They're the mounting bolts are put in a V, and you can raise havoc trying to get those those ones on the inside. I got the technique. I've done it a lot, but oh my gosh, they can take you a while. In an HS carburetor, horizontal short body, but if you want to think about it, horizontal side float, um, with a side float on them, that you just take the float bowl lid off. That's where the problem lies. Oh, unless it's the jet, but it's hardly ever the jet. So, we talked.
John, for taking the carburetors off, and then having a readjustment. Friend of mine made me this.
Oh
You
yeah,
put on the
okay.
front of the carburetors, take them off as a set, unless you got to pull them up, and then when you put them back on, very little adjustment. You still got to check it, but it works pretty good.
All that linkage doesn't fall apart.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, I'm pretty good. I can take one carburetor, put it. I use I use a lot of red grease, and pack those hollow nuts with the red grease and put the linkage in it, and get the other one and put the other carburetor on top and then put them sideways and stick them on. But I've done it more than once. I was going to talk about throttle shafts. I think Fred already did, but this throttle shaft right here is worn right in here. It isn't 5/16. We lose some area in here. Therefore, air comes in after the jetting, and air enters between the carburetor body and the shaft and leans out the mixture. So, as a result, when you're adjusting your carburetors, you adjust them rich to account for that lean mixture. Now, up at 60 miles an hour, that little tiny bit of leak isn't going to make one whit of difference, except that you've already adjusted the carburetor too rich to make up for that leanness at idle. One of the problems we have is that we adjust the carburetor at idle, which is like a pinhole of throttle opening, and just it so uses so little air fuel, and we try to imagine that now this is going to be linearly correct all the way up to 80 miles an hour, and it'd be a whole lot better if you could adjust your carburetors at 30 miles an hour. But I don't know anyone with a rolling road dyno, so not since I left University Motors in London, England. Lastly,
John, I had a question about SU linkage.
Yeah.
So first of all, I'm a big fan of your ZS carburetor rebuild, all three videos, watched them 100 times, loved it. Thank you. And I do put 80, 90 in my 80, 90 in my ZS carb. So you're gospel to me. I have a 65 MG midget. It was having difficulty starting, and it would the engine would kick out. I'm going to get to my point in a second. The engine would kick out right when it was about to. The starter would kick out right about to catch.
Right.
And a very learned advisor said, "Hey, you don't have enough fuel at choke." And so I confirmed this by pulling out my choke lever, and then I noticed that how the choke lever pulls the jets down. I noticed I still had a little bit of play that the cable wasn't giving to me, and if I touched that little bit down, the car would kick right over. How do I eliminate that play in the linkage so that when I pull out that choke, I'm getting my full pull?
Well, first of all, make sure the outer sheath of the choke cable is as short as you can make it. Don't make it too short, because then you got to buy another one and start over again. But if you got an extra 6 inches of length in that cable, you can't make it work. The all new cables are sold way too long, so they'll fit lots of different applications. But shorten up your outer cable so that it fits handily, it fits nicely, but it's not too long.
The outer sheath, you're talking about that little that little tube that protects the cable.
Bingo.
And if that is too long, I'm not getting that extra.
Right. So that's the first thing. Now
Yeah.
some of them are fixed. They got an end on them, and so
Yeah.
that's the way it is. Another way is to make sure that the nuts. I didn't. Do you have an HS carburetor in front of you, Fred?
I didn't bring any up with me
Okay.
though.
On the side where you got the linkage, I'm just going to pretend this is the Stromberg. It's not the same thing, but where you got those hollow nuts,
Yeah.
on the side, make sure that the hollow nut on the choke linkage is in fact all the way tight, and then rotate it after you're done with that to make sure that yes, it still is free, and then use a lot of oil on the carburetor linkage. Oil is your friend, just to make sure everything glides. And then all you can do is adjust it with that trunnion and screw, adjust it so that when you pull the choke out of the dash about that far, that those jets drop about that far.
Right. But my problem was the jet still had a little bit way to go, but the cable wasn't catching it. So it could be the outer sheath might be too long.
Could
And
be.
then the other one was, you said there was like a hollow nut.
The nuts that hold the interconnecting link. There's a
Okay.
hollow nut on each carburetor, and the interconnecting link goes between them. If those are loose, then stuff isn't going to work the way it should.
All
So
right.
make sure those are tight. That's just a 1/4 inch BSF wrench or a crummy 7/16, and then oil the shit out of it so it's all nice and lubed.
John, what kind of car did he say he's got?
65 midget.
65 midget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there was a thread recently, and I think it had to do with the T series. And I know on the B, the sheath moves the choke
Yeah,
instead of the internal cable.
yeah.
But on real cars, the internal cable moves the choke. And there was a discussion about replacing the braided wire with piano wire
No,
so that you have a positive pushback. You're shaking your head. I'm curious. Why is that a bad idea?
it's stiff. You don't need to. If everything's lubed up, okay, it'll work. Look in your Moss catalog for a cable abutment on the choke cable on an MGB engine. Any MGB from 60, 62, 63, all the way up through 74. There's a cable abutment, and that's where the cable fits into. On a T-type, use instead of that clamping thing around the cable, use the cable abutment and bring it looks absolutely original, and it is just an upgrade with a real MG and SU parts. That cable will come in and hit that abutment and stop. It won't slip in there. You don't have to crush the cable or anything. And then use and make sure that choke cable is short enough, and then also make sure that the carburetors are working okay. So you use that rod between the carburetors on the TC, TD, TF, or on the A, the two arms that come up together to run the choke. Pull that thing up, paint some grease on the jet, oil the linkage, and move that thing up and down about 100 times so it gets really nice and free. Just exercise it, just make it free, and then you don't have to. I wouldn't use a piano wire.
John?
Okay, thanks.
It's a lawnmower repair.
John?
Yeah, Walter.
Hi, how are you? One other thing I find on the HS chokes is the linkage where it attaches to the jet. There's a little Phillips screw there, and there's supposed to be some fitting in there to like a ferrule.
Yep.
To take up some of
the side view of that looks like a top hat.
Yes.
So what we're telling the gentleman with the 65 midget is that Phillips screw goes through a hole like this.
Yes.
And can move around. And there's supposed to be a little tiny fitting, a little brass fitting that goes in that larger diameter, and the screw goes through it. So there's no lost motion. If you don't have that piece, you can cut off the thinnest piece of 1/8 inch tubing, 3/16 tubing, maybe same size tubing I think you use on the dump tubes on a T-type. Tubing is measured on the outside diameter. So I think it's 3/16 tubing. But you can just the thinnest shim you can get out of that, it'll fit right inside that bigger hole, and your screw will go through it. So I know I've used those in the past, just to make something to fit in there. I don't know how you'd find a washer small enough to fit in there. But the problem is that the bar that comes down is supposed to push the jet down. It and the screw that is in there, you end up with some free play. So here, allow me to use my artistic skills here. It looks like this, only very, very much smaller. It's about the diameter of the pencil, even smaller than that, but it's just a little tiny, tiny piece that fits in there. And then the screw fits through here. I've got it shown here with the screw fitted through from the bottom in that outside diameter. That outside diameter fits into the hole of the strap that comes down from the choke assembly. So somewhere in all that, the cable, the lubrication, the tightness of the nut, someplace in there lies the answer.
So in that example you just showed, what you were saying is when that cable is going through the nut, there might be some play where that nut goes through the linkage
No.
mechanism, right? That's what you were trying to explain.
No, different spot. What he's saying is that where your cable attaches to the linkage,
Yeah.
you want to make sure you don't have any slack in your cable at that point.
Right.
Make sure it's as close to tight as possible. And then where the linkage connects to the bottom of the jet,
Right.
black piece of plastic, there's a little collet in there that the screw goes through and screws into the plastic as your pivot point. That's where you're talking about the little collet that's might be missing.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's see, what else do we have here? I think is that about it? Have we covered this, Fred? Is there anything else that we can talk about?
Well, there's probably plenty more things we could talk about, but we've covered a lot of the basics.
It's been an hour and a half. No, yeah, and if you get
John,
if you get somebody here that knows what they're talking about, they could probably talk about it a lot longer too. Yeah. Anyway, Gerald.
Hey, John, it's Gerard D'Angelo from Yardley, PA. I just had a question in regards to the HS4s versus the HIFs, and if you could just expound upon it, it'd be great. But I've been rebuilding some HIFs lately, and the difference in like how the HS4s, when you use the choke, you're basically pulling the cable, which is physically pulling the jet down out of the bottom of the carburetor. Whereas with the HIFs, you have the cold enrichment device, which is attached to the cam, and you're basically opening a passage inside of the float bowl at the bottom of the carburetor and allowing fuel to go through a microscopic passage, that is like, I mean, I was so stunned by how small that passage was. I passed a piece of aviation wire through it to get it to be clean. And I actually had a situation where I was driving my car. I went to go run an errand in my GT. And when I left the store to go back in the car smelled like fuel and I couldn't get it started. And what happened was I had taken the braided hose that goes in between the two carburetors in the HIFs. And you had done a video a long time ago about how to clean up the braided hose. And I put a new one in there, and a small piece of the braiding wire fell into the tube and went through the carburetor, landed in the seat, and the needle stuck, and it prevented the needle from seating, so the rear carburetor flooded. So it's just like, to me, that's the reason why I love the HIFs. I really do. But what I've learned from them so far has been like, it is imperative to keep the fuel system clean because those passages are ridiculously small.
So there's a couple reasons I don't like the HIFs. Okay, I mean, just that's just me. But anything having to do with fuel, you got to take the carburetor off the car. Okay. I changed in a parking lot one time. I changed a sunk float. I changed a sunk float, and the car started up. And I said, "Hey, you take them off when you get home, and make sure that the float height's correct." And I don't suppose he ever probably touched it, but they will suffer an awful lot of abuse. Another thing is that on that rotary choke on the HIFs, there's an O-ring on there, a number 8, no, bigger than that, number 10. And then when that fails, not if, when that fails, the choke comes on by itself when you're running down the road. And back in the day when people were using MGs as primary transportation in January in Grand Rapids, when it was all of -5 and maybe colder on some days, those chokes would leak, and you'd got all this extra gasoline that would come into the engine. You wouldn't know, you're just driving. You wouldn't know until the car started belching all kinds of nasty smoke out the tailpipe, because instead of having 1 gallon of oil in the sump, you had 2 gallons of oil and gasoline. So much gas got into the cylinders that the oil scraper rings would scrape it down into the sump. And of course, the inside of the engine was like brilliantly clean. I remember taking the valve cover off on one, and it's like you couldn't pay somebody to clean it that well. But there's not much lubrication in gasoline, and it's not it's not a good idea to have 2 gallons of oil gasoline inside your sump. So, and to repair that, just to change that little tiny O-ring, you got to take the carburetors off the car.
Right.
So they're probably less expensive to make. That's probably it. That there's those emissions going on, and so maybe it had something to do with emissions, but it probably had more to do with the cost of producing them.
Right, right. And then the only other thing I wanted to ask you was when you were talking about the valve in the throttle disc, the bypass valve. I have successfully taken that valve out and soldered just the lid on it, left it, yeah, so that I've actually soldered the bottom portion and then cut that whole piece off
Yes.
to negate the airflow going through. But at the same time, too, on the bottom of some of the discs, there's a little notch. And
That's
that notch,
that's 72 only.
okay, yeah, that was, I had to replicate that notch in one of my sets. And I
It's
did successfully.
It's easier to take a Dremel tool and get rid of the little pipe that comes up, that choke, that mixture control. It's not choke
Right.
pipe, but called a choke pipe. Yeah, they just brought it down to the normal size. And when you get one of those discs with a notch in it, and you put that into another carburetor, it's like you can't get the idle below about 3,000 RPM. That's all it takes. There isn't much air that goes through an engine at idle, but you got a great big notch out of there. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Right. I was just curious, like, what is that little tube? What is that tube? What does
That's
it
the
do?
other end of your choke. That's the other end of your mixture. That's
Okay,
where
that's
it's
what I thought.
sucked out into the airflow and vaporized.
Gotcha.
Right
Okay.
there.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
John, can I break in for a moment?
Yes, sir. George.
Yeah, let's go back to air intake. We're talking about the radius
Yes, sir.
going into the carburetor. We're working on those now on my HS4s. Yeah. Well, if you buy an aftermarket carburetor, I mean, an aftermarket air filter, that's not there. And most of the time it won't fit. So what goes up is a 90-degree turn or a 90-degree shot into the throat. Air doesn't like to go 90 degrees. It'd much rather take some other kind of route. And what we found on a flow bench, I put my 15-year-old grandson on it. He's in a STEM school up in Colorado Springs. And we figured out a 1/4-inch radius was exactly what we needed. So we're
Okay.
making some now on a 3D printer to see what we can come up with. I'll take it to the chassis dyno end of this week if it warms up, or next week. Right now it's below 60, and I don't go outside much below 60. You guys with zero temperatures are nuts.
I was just feeling this one. You were talking, I was running my finger along this, and there's a ridge. There's a ridge right on the inside that it's with a smaller diameter than the rest of it. It's just this tiny little ridge, and just little tiny stuff like that. You make it all smooth, and it's got to work better, So
One other thing we're talking about, flowing heads, or
yes,
porting heads. You need 200 grit sandpaper works good on intake. If you're going to do that,
okay,
make sure you use some Dicom, to figure out where you're going. On the exhaust, get it as shiny, as slick as you can. That's
yes.
years of trying to go fast in an MG, and that's not really, doesn't work real well.
So that one thing that Carl found doing all these pulls on this dynamometer was that although the inlet is of great consideration, I mean, the more air fuel you get in the cylinder, the better. But getting the hot gases out is as or more important. And he showed me, I think, on the end of the MGB cylinder head that in one spot, the diameter, I'm sorry, I've got to use my mute all button here, but I'm back to you. That the port, the effective port for the exhaust is, I don't know, probably bigger than my little finger, but certainly less than my thumb. And so that piston comes up and has to push all those gases out of there. And therefore the inside of the cylinder head stays hot while all this is happening. And the more quickly you can get the exhaust gases out of there with the least amount of restriction, like mirror sides of that port, you can raise the compression because the temperature of the head doesn't get as great. And if you go to an aluminum head, oh my gosh, you can go like a 1.5 higher. You can go from an 8 to 9.5 to 1, no problem at all, because you don't have all that heat stored up there, which causes detonation and pre-ignition. But now we're getting into cylinder heads. But it's supposed to. It's 8:30. 8:30. We've been talking about this for an hour and a half. We could talk about cylinder heads for a long time, and then we could talk about cams for a long time too. So
Well,
anyway,
the big thing is just make sure they've got about a 1/4 inch radius if they're going to try to do that.
Thank you.
And aftermarkets don't have them.
This looks a lot larger than that. But anyway, yes, thank you. Thank you. When you get those available, you're going to make them, you sell them to Moss for $10 each, then we can all buy them for 20. So
If my grandson wants to do that, we'll talk about it. Otherwise, no.
okay.
He'll make it for pops.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Do we have some more questions? Fred, you got anything else?
No, I think that's about it.
John?
Yes, sir. Steve?
When I was working on removing that poppet valve, I just cut the thing out of there and took some JB welding and made that disc a smooth, flat disc. That worked fine, and it saved me. Like, of course, back then you could buy those discs for $10 a piece. That's no longer the case.
That is no longer the case. Yeah, they're like 30 now or 32 or something per disc. But I just went to McDonald's today too, and that was $10.16. So everything, yeah.
They call that progress.
Yep.
I just looked them up. They're almost $25 a piece.
Oh, that much. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
They're not 30. I was grossly exaggerating.
Well, they probably will be next week.
But if you solder them from the back side, from the spring side, and get real good contact in there, then you can take a pair of nippers and just bite this thing off and grind it down. And it's not perfectly.
Sounds like highway robbery.
Yeah. You still got this button on the top side that's going to affect the airflow some, but it's again, somebody asked, right, like the third question in, does any of this make a difference? And bottom line is kind of like no. And I mean, you can always put HS6 carburetors on your MGB, but don't because that's way over carbureted. I mean, if a carburetor made your car go faster, why not get a carburetor that big for an MGB? Why not? Because it doesn't work, because it isn't just about the size. It has to be small enough. A Nash Metropolitan has a single, it's an MGA 1500 engine. And of course, it isn't designed for any kind of sports car use, but that's got like a downdraft Solex. It's a inch big. I mean, it's just tiny. And Worldwide Imports, Peter Caldwell has an Australian delivered uh, some kind of BMC van. It's a six-cylinder. This is a six-cylinder engine with a single HS2 carburetor on it. Okay, because it's for round town use. It's not made so. Um, you just can't keep adding carb and hoping to go faster. It's what kind of driving are you going to do and everything. But cleanliness is critical. Cleanliness and consistency. And then, some people take the time to weld a bung into their exhaust and read the oxygen. That's cool. Some people take their stuff to a flow bench, and flow it. There's enough instructions out there on how to make a flow bench yourself with an old shop vacuum cleaner and some plywood, and you got to have a couple of manometers to catch the pressure at the beginning and end of the carburetor. But anything's possible. Consistency, 90 weight gear oil on the linkages. So,
You know what else with the keeping your carburetors clean? I only use top tier gas. And the one time I was in Pennsylvania in the middle of nowhere, almost out of gas, stopped at this station. It looks like it's been around forever. And I don't think they had much business. And I got dirt in my carburetors, had to take them apart in a campground. But I use top tier gas and only stations that are busy. You get a station nobody goes to, you don't want to go there unless it's an emergency. But my carburetors stay pretty clean. Always use a good gas. I like Marathon the best, but any top tier is good.
John, I got a question.
Yeah,
I've
Larry.
got a MGA and it was rebuilt. The engine was rebuilt by, supposedly a good shop. Carburetors supposedly were rebuilt. But the oil is dirty. I can't tell how much it's losing because it's an MG and it leaks so much. You can't tell the difference. But I don't see a lot of smoke in the exhaust, but the oil's definitely dirty.
How many miles are on the engine now?
Oh, 5,000.
Oh
It
yeah,
did it right from the start. Did it right from the
we're
start.
beyond the yeah. Well, I don't know.
What would be some of the causes? Somebody said maybe it wasn't broken in properly.
Well, but after 5,000 miles, it's broken in.
Yeah,
It's as
and
broken
I
in as it's
believe I
going to
had a
be.
bad carb that was running rich for a while at the beginning, but I just don't know.
It's not gonna make the oil look dirty. It's gonna thin it out.
Yeah.
And so
Okay. Well, but unless its engine's burning, it maybe rings or valve seals, or I don't know. Any suggestions?
No.
All right, I'll
Do
try.
do a compression test and see how they look. Do a
I'm
compression
sorry,
test.
the plugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, the plugs, one of the plugs in the back seems to be dirtier than the other ones. That's a very good point. Thanks. Carbon's up, more than the other three.
Yeah, if you go out for a run, a 10-mile, 20-mile run, and come right back into the garage and pop the plugs out. I mean, you don't have to pop the plugs out while it's hot. You can wait till it's cool, but you don't want to let it sit and idle because all of our cars are designed to idle rich.
Okay, so
And
run hot and look at the
yeah, you
plug.
just want to see what they look like when they're out on the road, and that insulator, which is porcelain, so it's bone white, should be khaki colored. I mean, like cardboard box color.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's black, that's either because it's too rich or it's oil. Now, how can you tell? Now, does it feel oily? You run your finger inside the exhaust? Does that seem oily? What do the people who follow you say? Do they get drops of oil
Yeah,
on
I
the
had my
windshield?
wife follow me, and she said, "Look, nothing came out of the exhaust." And I down a steep hill and all that.
I don't think I wouldn't. there's other stuff to concern yourself with. I think
Yeah.
this is okay. I don't
Yeah,
think
that
it's
was
an
going to
issue.
be my philosophy too. So, all right, but thank you.
You're welcome.
John, I got an air cleaner question.
Yes, sir.
I found these in the basement.
Oh yeah, look at that for a T-type. Let's
No, I think these are midgets. It says Stellings and Hellings Company,
yeah.
Burbank, California.
Let's see the backside. Where it mounts. No, where it mounts against the carburetor. Oh, those are big. That's like MGB. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah, that
yeah,
sounds right.
yeah. Then all those things are. If what kind of mesh is in there? In the
It's very coarse. It looks like it would let anything but gravel through there.
right. That's because you're supposed to oil it like
Right.
almost every time you go out, and that's going to drip on the inner fender and
So
under.
these are for racing and for an MGB or something.
Okay, but
Is that right?
they're designed to have oil on them.
Yeah.
That's what grabs the particulates
Right, but you got to keep oiling them all the time. Is
all
that
the
right?
time. Yeah,
Okay. Anybody want them?
and
What
they
oil
don't
do
have
you
this.
recommend?
Right.
They look cool.
They do. I thought they'd look real good. But
Hey, John, this is Joe from California. I got a quick question on the floats. Any concerns with replacing the brass floats with the nitrofill?
I don't think so.
Because I've heard that they tend to absorb more fuel and they'll get heavier over time.
Maybe I haven't heard that. If you're on MG Experience or one of those forums, there's all kinds of stuff out there. Not that it's right or wrong, but you got to separate the wheat from the chaff. It's hard. I have not heard of that at all. And if those were getting heavy and sinking, so would the HS carburetors. So would these. Curto hasn't come up with the HIF floats yet, but the downside of the brass ones is that they do perforate, and they're no longer floats, but as Glenn from Glenn's MG Service in St. Petersburg says, they're now sinks. They're not floats. So I think those plastic ones are just fine. That's all I know. I haven't heard anything bad about them.
John?
Yes.
Back to the mesh oil. What oil do you recommend?
Whatever you got, engine oil.
If you can use that red sticky, the spray stuff, that's great on the mesh. And then of course you have to clean them in gas every once in a while, let them dry out, and then re-red them.
How different is that? That's the K&N spray stuff, right? So how it's red? How different is that from like Marvel Mystery Oil?
That's not really the stuff I'm familiar with. The one I've got it comes out of an aerosol.
Yeah.
And it adheres. So
It's
it doesn't
accurate.
drip. It doesn't run out. It will stick all kinds of particulates to it. And it cuts with gasoline, so you can start the filter over again.
Is this the K&N spray, or is where do you get it?
I can go look downstairs and bring one up.
Yeah, it's tackier than Marvel Mystery Oil. And
Okay.
it's a lot like the air filter oil that they sell for motorcycle aftermarket air cleaners.
Okay. All right.
It's like a real sticky red greasy oil.
Okay. That's what
it
you
still
want.
drips.
Well, sure. Sure. If it gets hot enough. So Skip, that's what you want. So
Okay, ironically, I have the red stuff for my motorcycle.
okay. All right.
John, can I jump in here?
Yeah, sure. Pat.
I just turned a set of old rusty Hellings into a real air filter.
How did you do that?
Well, I put in some foam, which I bought on Amazon. It's called Uni, who makes motorcycle filters.
Okay.
And I bought a sheet of filter foam cut to fit. Threw the Brillo pad stuff away and put real filter foam in there, which can be oiled.
You can also pull that out and put put Palmolive kitchen soap on it and squeeze them out and clean them.
Oh, to clean it out? Yeah, no, that's the owner's job now.
So that the deal with air cleaners is you want to get as many of the particulates out of the air as you can without impacting the free flow of air through the filter. Because if the filter begins to restrict the air, then the mixture is going to get too rich. So the nice thing about an MGB air filter, a paper MGB filter, is that even though it's only this big around and that tall, if you take it apart and cut the top and bottom off, it's like this long, that top, that high, and that long. The surface area is enormous. So if the surface area is too small, it's either going to restrict the air, or once it gets dirty, it's going to restrict the air, and you have to put maintenance into it and clean it. So there's a lot of information there about air cleaners. K&N filters are really good. The TD air filter, the oil bath air filter, is the best filter ever, but it's got about 490-degree turns in it. It's got to be just horrible as far as efficiency.
Yep.
The TC and the TF and the MGA all demand to be oiled on a regular basis with that sticky oil. I didn't even know that stuff existed. I've been doing this for 50 years. I never heard of that stuff. Thank you. And then on the later cars, those paper filters, you just got to keep an extra set around so that when they go out of production temporarily, like they did last year, you can still get you still have a set at the house.
Hey, John, have you got a sec? Remember that at the last at your last Zoom meeting, you had the resurrection of older cars that hadn't been run for ages.
Yes.
Are there any basic things that you would need to do when you go and have a look at one of these to check the issues? Is there any basic stuff that you can do to check that the issues are reasonable or at least in some working order?
You're taking a look at a barn find or something that someone's got.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm having a look
Chris,
on having
Chris,
a look at
I've got it. I'm sorry, I had to use the mute all button. Chris, you can unmute yourself again. And
I'm heading up on Wednesday to see a barn find, a 69 MGB GT, but it hasn't been running for about 20 years. I'm taking some tools up with me to have a look at it, and I wondered whether there were any basic things I could do to check the issues before I decide to get it towed.
Make sure the engine turns over, or be prepared to lower your price if the engine won't turn over. I mean, you're going to have to do the brakes. You're going to have to do all the brakes, the master cylinder, and the hoses. I don't know about the front brake calipers, but the rear brakes, absolutely. You're going to have to do that. The clutch is stuck. And we talked about how to unstick, how to thaw, how to unfreeze a clutch, but getting it running. And you can check the oil. Chances are, like the last gentleman who was on talking about the dirty oil, it's like really filthy oil because most people don't store MGs correctly. They run them hard, put them away wet, gonna drive them tomorrow, and then it's 20 years later. So the oil's probably real crappy, and I would change when I got the car, as a matter of course, I would change the rod bearings in the three center mains on that engine, just in an oil pump, just to do it. I mean, if you got to go farther later, take the head off or do the rings or something. But I would just do that because, oh my gosh, I'll bet those bearings are in terrible shape. And you clean all the crap out of the bottom of the sump. But the most important thing about a barn find, I mean, you can fix an engine, you can fix the brakes, you can redo the seats. You can't fix the body. That's I mean, I'm a mechanic. I don't know how those body work guys do it. So take a magnet, take an ice pick, and just go along the sills there. And where they start to rust first is in the dog leg, right behind the front door. I guess it's the only door, right behind the door in the dog leg. And then the next place is up in front of the door at the very bottom of the fender where the moisture gets trapped, can't ventilate, and it rusts from the inside out. And then after that, it can be anywhere along the sill or anywhere, but it's the body that you're after.
Hey, John, Gerard again. As a bodywork guy or a self-taught bodywork guy, a good thing to check on the B is the castle rail. So to go underneath and check the integrity of the castle rail. A friend of mine just bought a 72, and he thought it was a great deal. And it turns out the castle rail was patched in many sections. So I have a spring project coming up where I'm actually going to
Oh my
surgically remove the castle rail and put that in for him. So it's doable. It's just like it's like grafting skin on a body.
Oh yeah. Yeah, on the inside of the arm while the arm's held close to the body. Oh my
Yeah, yes,
gosh.
sir.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a task.
Another thing I look for is that seam in the rocker panel near the end of the door. If
Yep.
that's gone, there's body work done.
That's gone. Someone slicked over it. I got to switch over to my chat section here. If you got something else, to break in and everything, but we're pushing against 9 o'clock, and I haven't even hit chat. So here we've got Marty's got our birthday party is this coming weekend. If you're around here, oh my gosh, it says I got 60 in the chat section. I'm not going to get there unless 30 of them are Marty's. So anyway, our birthday party is this coming weekend in Grand Rapids. Be here. Let's see the next one. We got PayPal donations from Mr. Heisel. Do you have any advice on changing the clutch hose on the MGB? I changed the master and slave a few months ago following a clutch failure. Anyway, but I got stuck with a hose. So yeah, are you on? Are you still on?
Yep, I am. Hi, John. How are you doing?
Oh, hey, great.
Now I should say you can probably even answer this 3 months from now because it's way too cold in my garage. I'm not getting under it now, but
All right. So the easier way to do this takes longer. The easier way, disconnect the battery, take the starter motor out.
I
Okay.
wondered.
Okay,
Yeah.
then now it's easy. So if you don't want to do that, you've got to have a crowfoot wrench. So
Yeah.
that's a line wrench that you can put your 3/8 drive into, 7/16, unscrew the nut above the nut that goes into the hose from the steel pipe. Cannot twist that. It has to be free. If it starts moving, you put some heat on it, something or other. Right. Once that's off and you just bend it out of the way, then I think it's an inch socket, inch maybe. It's probably BSF size. And you get a real long extension and just go on down there and you can take the nut off the top of that, hold the bottom. The bottom side of that flange is a 7/16 British BSF. Why? But it is. But vice grips work great when you're taking it apart.
I know some people say just cut the hose, and that way you can just stick a socket on it. But
Well, you got to stick a socket on it from on top. Well,
okay.
you can also stick a socket on it from the bottom. 7/16 British, but it'd still have to be a pretty deep socket. So I just do it like that, and then get it out of there, and then unscrew it from the slave. New one, copper washer. Tighten it up into the slave wherever it comes up naturally. Put some grease. I love red grease. Put some grease on the threads. Get it nice and tight, and then put the hose into it, and then bleed it.
Great. Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate it. And
Hey.
John, did you say something about I had sent you pictures because I don't recall. Oh, okay. Okay, good.
That's
Because I was going to say if you got some for me, I don't think I said any. You don't want to open.
Funny.
Great, thanks.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Tony Wisely, 47TC. Okay. Let's see. You can use hydraulic jack oil, but be wary that it can attract a lot of dust. So this apparently has to do with putting oil on the top of the carburetors. And classic engines, modern fuel. That is what Fred held up. Yep. And by whom? Paul Ireland. Paul Ireland wrote that book. Here we got some stuff going on here. We got here, Marty's got a link to it, the chat sections. Oh, here we go. Tony says, Wisely, it says, I've had great results with a Gunson color tune from Moss to tune up my twin SU carbs on my 73 BGT. Has anyone else seen it for MGBs on other sites like Napa or Advance Auto or O'Reilly's? So that I don't use a Gunson color tune. It can be helpful, but if you're using a color tune, if you're using one, they want you to get a pretty blue flame at idle. Does not work. You want a red flame at idle. This isn't a gas stove. This is the inside of your car, and all our MGs idle rich. So you expect a red color out of the color tune. So I'm trying to go through my sections here. Pat Garrity's got a note on pre-war SUs often had a damper cap that said use bicycle oil, but of course that's those early carburetors didn't have the damper in them. They just had to have something to lubricate the outside of the shaft where it goes into the inside of here. They just wanted that, but I don't know what motorcycle oil is. I expect pretty light stuff. Here we got some more notes about this. And Pat Garrity says, isn't that curve on the velocity stack a parabolic curve? Could be. Don't know. It looks a fair bit like here we go. We're talking about freezing temperatures. Martin, and we got some notes here. And we got a note here about a car being auctioned off. Tim Waller says the Academy of Art University in San Francisco had an excellent car collection, and one of the MGBs or something, a nice TC, a Tickford, and anyway, they're having some kind of auction out there. All right, John Lind. Here we go. John Lind, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, need advice changing out the lower brass bushing in the swivel axle on the MGA?
It's a 76 midget 1500.
Oh, okay. All right. So there's the pin that goes at the out at the end of the A arm.
Right.
It always comes loose in the A arm. That's got
Right.
16 threads per inch on a 9/16 diameter and a 5/8 diameter. Who else can tell you that today? But it's the same threads because you got to screw the whole
Right.
thing in. And the A arm goes bad, the pin goes bad, the
It's
kingpin.
all bad.
Yeah, so you've got to.
I've got a new A-arm for the bottom. There was a fracture where the fulcrum pin went into that piece, so the actual bottom of the kingpin would move out. There's a fracture in the casing. So I've got new parts.
Okay.
But my problem is that the swivel that goes on top of the kingpin with the axle attached to it, the bottom bushing, I think as a result of that movement, it kind of elongated the inside of that bushing, so I need to replace that.
Okay.
And I'm trying to figure out how to do the least amount of damage while I can try to be as successful as I can do.
Okay, so if you're sure that the new kingpin still wobbles in there, the bottom bushing in the stub axle is the one that fails first.
Correct.
You've got to find somebody with mandrels and a reamer because those bushings are supplied undersize. So you either drive the old bushing out, the new bushing in, and then ream it in line. I don't know.
How do you get it back in there?
I'm
I'm terrified of. I really don't want to ruin the machine edge of the bushing because it's got kind of a taper to it, and I don't want to bugger it all up trying to get it in.
Send me some pictures. Send me some
Okay.
pictures on either on email or on my phone. Marty's got my phone up in here.
I've got it in here.
And show me what you're talking about.
Okay.
And we'll see if we can come
Also,
up.
I think Apple Hydraulics rebuilds those. And I think maybe Worldwide does too. I don't know.
Okay.
Apple Hydraulics or Worldwide. Okay. Well, tomorrow, 1 o'clock is your normal time, right? So I could try to send you a
that's
text.
a bad time tomorrow. Call in the morning would be better.
In the morning? Okay.
Yeah.
I got your number here.
I'm on.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. So now we're going to when my Lotus with an X-Bag and H6s was raced in the 50s, they used no dampers. No, they're cut off because the car's always running at full speed. And that was one of the hot setups. That's MKV 130 to everybody. Talking about no dampers in the top because you don't want any restriction because this is racing. It's a whole different ball game. Martin to everyone regarding measuring the effect of the oil. It's not that expensive to install a fuel ratio gauge, an O2 sensor. I could see the effect when I changed the weight of the oil. Isn't that interesting? Okay. All right. That's cool. Shipwreck. My MG brass caps have the holes pre-drilled in them. Good, because it's hard to find a drill small enough to drill a hole that small through brass. You always end up with like an 1/8 inch hole, and that's like there's no problem with a big hole, only the dirt gets in there.
Oh, John, I got drill bits all the way from microscopic to 2-inch.
Okay, well that's cool. Yeah, my drill index is I've got some pretty small drills, but most everybody in their home kit doesn't have all that exotica. So, George Curl, I don't know how to break. I don't know how to break in. The radius for the B intake is optimal at 1/2 inch. K&N and aftermarket air filters do not have any radius at all. We talked about this. Yes, of course. Yeah. So I'm sure that'll help on the inside of those K&Ns. And John Dykey says it's too cold to go outside and look at anything tomorrow. Fair enough. What's your temperature over there? Where are you, in Ann Arbor, John? You still on?
Yeah, I'm still here. No, I'm in Chelsea, but that's close enough to Ann Arbor, and it's chilly.
That was -4 here. I think that was as chilly as it got here today is -4. Excuse me, not -4. That's a gross exaggeration.
4 or 5 hours.
It's a gross exaggeration. It wasn't -4, it's +4. It was -15 Celsius. Yeah, yeah. So
down to 3.
Oh, that's cool. So Chris says to everybody, what are the basic steps to carbs that have been sitting for years? Soak them down in some kind of WD-40 or something and take them apart one part at a time and clean every part as you go. And when you're all done, everything will be cleaned up as you go, and then follow some rebuild information. There's lots of information out there, but I just go one part at a time. The bodies, we didn't talk about that, but the bodies have got bushings in them where the shaft goes through, and there's bushings here. And in the SU carburetors, I've got other people have reamers to open up the aluminum housing to push in oil light bushings or new steel bushings, and then ream those out so that those fit nicely. So sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes it works just to put in a new shaft, and they're so close to being okay because it's just shaft that wears. Here we got Tom says clean, clean, clean. Yep, he's got a lot of information on there. So any concerns with replacing the brass floats with nitrofill? No, no, I don't have any complaints about that. Rob Brackett, who's got a Bug Eye Sprite, um, says oil the shit out of it. That's good advice. It always helps. Oil and grease are your friends. Anyone who's ever worked with me, who's seen me work, you know that I love red grease. So it's just NGLI #2 lithium grease, but I don't use gold or blue or black or anything else. Brown, certainly not brown. No, I like red grease, sticky, mechanics glue. So here we go. Here, Marty says there are 29 videos about carburetors on our University Motors channel. 29. Some of them are
Just
probably
updated that with all the most recent ones from the last year. So now it's got hopefully all of them.
and I know there's stuff Fred and I haven't covered. You know, I could talk about this for a long time. Oh my gosh. We had mm, the camshaft guy in California just passed away. Um,
Ed Escuderian?
no, British guy.
Oh,
Come on.
Anton.
Dave Anton. Thank you.
Anton, yeah.
Thank you. So he was coming through Grand Rapids one winter when I was having a technical seminar, and Carl Heidemann had been in touch with him, and he came by and he lectured our people at our tech seminar about camshafts. Maybe it was a tuning for speed class, and he's into the first and second derivatives of the lift, you know, which is now exceeded all but one person in the room, and that was him, you know, on their understanding. You sort of know what he's talking about, but oh my gosh, you could talk about SU carburetors, I bet. Well, there's 29 videos up, right? So let's see what else we got here. In Connecticut, a car that is older than 25 years is exempt from emissions. That's a lot better than California. California put what is that, Pat? 75, 78, somewhere in there?
75, I believe, John.
Okay, anything newer than that, it's gotta pass. And
Yeah,
so every now and then when we bring that up as a subject here on the Zoom, then everybody's like, well, some of the counties, if you register in some of the counties, you don't have to pass, and you can always register it in Las Vegas. It's a hassle. It's just a hassle.
Actually, John, they're in California, they're cracking down on the out-of-state registrations.
Fair enough.
Montana has that available, and yeah, they're looking for if they find the plates that don't match the state, they say, well, why are you sitting in our state so long in your garage?
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. You know, I mean, to be fair enough. But this isn't about fair. This is about how to do it. So anyway, so that loophole's getting squeezed, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. See, my HIF carburetor float bowl cover keeps warping every few years, and fuel leaks out the sides between where the screws are. Really? Really?
Yes. Here, this is my cover
Yeah.
that I took off.
Okay.
And if you put it on a flat surface, this is just a big arc on all
Really?
sides. But this is also on a turbocharged car, and the turbo is right below the carb. So it does get extra hot. But I'm on my third
Yeah,
one
but
in 7 years.
you got fuel on top of it. It can't be that hot.
Yeah, there's a fiberglass shroud that
Yeah,
shields
but I
it a
mean,
little
you
bit,
got
but
if it was getting too hot, the fuel would boil. So,
Shield
is
it.
the solid version of this more durable than this gusseted version?
I haven't seen those gusseted versions. Sure, that's what's weak. Yeah, just
This is actually the newer part.
Yeah. Well, it probably isn't made. You know, they're trying to cheap out on the metal. So yeah, I've never seen one warp, but I've seen only, including yours, probably two of those. You know, from the new style. So Everybody's got a float bowl lid, but there's two different float bowl lids. So you need the correct one. Fred, how do you tell those apart? Is there a part number on those or what? It has to do with the way the scoop is on the jet.
I always thought that they were the same on both carbs, front and rear.
This is a NHIF 44 on a different car, not my MG, but
Right,
I've got two
It's
of those cars.
It's an inch and 3/4. They just turn it over into a metric size.
Yeah, all the HISF should be the same, but I do know they have a solid version, but more or less, it's got the same interior shape.
Yeah, you want the solid version. I swear there's two different ones having to do with something. Anyway,
okay.
Take a picture of that and call my go-to place. Absolutely, hands down, Denver, Colorado, is Sports Car Craftsman, and you can send them a picture of that and say you want one. I can't begin to tell you what they're going to charge you, but they will send it out to you used that day. They don't screw around, and they'll tell you what they're going to charge you, but get two, but I can't believe another one's going to warp. So,
okay. Other part. Do these the blurry? Do these velocity stacks work too?
Well, the one gentleman here who's having his grandson make some said they ended up rolling a quarter inch radius, and that looks exactly like a quarter inch radius to me. So yeah, that should make quite a lot of difference. I mean, these make 2 horsepower on 60. And that's from Carl putting it on the dyno and testing it, just like that. So
cool.
Yeah, those are nice. Sports Car Craftsman, Denver, Colorado. Call them tomorrow. They'll put it right in the mail to you. Does a Gunson Color Tune see-through spark plug? I can't read this because there's something in the way. I've got some friggin' icon thing here. Just a minute. Do the same with unleaded petrol as with lead. Well, I don't know. I don't know if the Gunson Color Tune works with unleaded or leaded gasoline, but there is no such thing as leaded gasoline. There isn't any anywhere. It's illegal. Just a minute here. What's the recommended fuel flow per minute or PSI for an MGB? Yes, it's 1 pint per minute. 1 pint per minute, and the PSI should not exceed 3. You'll be a whole lot happier at 2.5. So, Tony, that's 1 pint per minute. It's usually not too much fuel that's coming through. It's usually not enough. And if the pressure is limited to 2.5 pounds, too much can't come through. So, thanks everybody. See you next time. I got the flow. Just a minute here. I've been using a facet pump. Those are good. If you can't suffer another SU pump, which are now what, $300, or you haven't got the ability to rebuild your own. I rebuild them for years. They're not that hard to do, but
Yeah, and that's actually highway robbery at that point.
oh, it's crazy. So you can buy a facet for what, 32? Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. And my buddy Glenn Lenhard, I'm doing a tech seminar in Florida. If anyone's still on from Florida, I'm doing a tech seminar in Florida on the 22nd of February in St. Petersburg at Glenn's MG shop. Anyway, Glenn says, I'm not gonna pay $300 for a pump. That's highway robbery. So he always sells facet pumps. And the other thing is facet pumps don't fail. Or the failure rate is an asterisk. But I can't, I'm Mr. Original, so it's a terrible, terrible quandary to be in.
You can also find some at Napa, the generic ones that are still 12 volt. You just gotta get the polarity right. They're like less than $40. They're pretty good.
Okay, well, Facet is a wonderful trade name. I know Facet puts out the right pressure.
And they have some with the pumps with the kit too, with
Okay.
the filter in it, in line.
Oh, very nice. Very
But
nice.
you got to get the low pressure facet pump. High pressure is just going to cause you nothing but grief.
Yeah, the Facet is a 42S, and all the other generics are also 42Ss.
Thanks. There's some aftermarket pumps are really, really noisy. And I mean, when you're out driving at 70 miles an hour, it's just a barely noticeable something coming from the trunk. But man,
Yeah, not mine.
around town or something. But those Facet pumps are pretty quiet. I think you can isolate those too. You can mount them on rubber, which in turn is mounted on rubber, and yeah, Glenn just swears by them. So.
And that pump, that tech session you're going down there in Florida with, what, you know what it's going to be on?
Maintenance, the complete lube, engine, gearbox, differential, front shocks, rear brakes, front brakes, handbrake, door strikers, everything. The complete lubrication.
Thank you.
The link is in the chat.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. Just a minute here. You mentioned barn finds, what to look for. Oh, the castle rail. Here we go. Yep, thank you.
Excuse me. Did you check out the rest of that post? The one about the Facet pump?
I don't know. Idle speed set at 1050, that one, to stay running or it stalls.
Yep.
So that's not the pump. That's something else. But the 5 psi pump is too much. If you think about it, idle, you hardly need any air, a pinhole of air, and less gasoline. It's 60 miles an hour. That's where everything's got to be working perfect. So your fuel pump is never the problem at idle unless it's got too much pressure and it's causing it to run way too rich. So. All right, I'm trying to buzz through these here and trying to get down to the bottom because there's so much. And Doug Clark, are you here tonight? Are you still on?
Yes, John, I'm on.
Okay. All right. I got a hat. Just hang on. Hang on. The Chicagoland swap meet's coming up on March 23rd. Sunday, March 23rd this year. So I'll see people there. I'm trying to catch this. I think I got down to the end. It says, George Curl, good night and thank you. So if you didn't get your question answered, talk to me now.
How much does an overdrive transmission add to the value of an MGB?
Not $2,000. I don't think so. It's so splendid to have. It's such a nice option. But whether it's painted Inca yellow or russet brown will change the value more than the overdrive.
Yeah, my dad's got a 73 MGB GT with overdrive in third and fourth gear, and the speedometer knuckle does not engage even at any speed. And sometimes intermittently we'll hear it spinning behind the dash, even though we got electronic tach set up in there. And it just, our electronic speedometer, and it just does not do anything when you want it to, and it does when you don't want it to. Is that a gear inside that's stripped in the rear part of the transmission behind the overdrive?
When we there's a 90-degree drive on the
We've
side.
put 3 of those on there, and not a single one has done it. So it's internal.
Okay, but those are notoriously weak. Not 3 of them. I can't believe that. But we always got rid of them. And overdrive. There isn't a 90-degree drive on an overdrive. It comes straight out. Comes straight out of the gearbox. I was going to say the non-overdrive cars get rid of that 90-degree box and just use an overdrive cable. Um, and there is a gear on the inside of the gearbox which might be stripped. It's like impossible to change if the driving gear on the main shaft on the annulus is faulty. So you're gonna get oil in your face. Drain the gearbox first. You can pull the pinion out, or instead take a screwdriver, one of those little tiny screwdrivers that mechanics have in their pocket or something, and put that into the drive, and then get one wheel off the ground, or just turn the drive shaft with your other hand. Turn the drive shaft and see if that screwdriver turns. If you can hold the screwdriver still, meaning that the gear isn't turning, then they're stripped, and they're stripped together. But you can change the external one. There's 2 different colors. And the 73 is probably a red one, for a 1280 turns per mile. But you can always try to change the driven gear first, because you can.
Is there anything that could cause that to strip? Like if there's too much load put onto the cable?
Too much? Sure. I mean, they're just plastic gears. So, usually the speedo cable fractures first, usually. But
I mean, like it's original to the car. I don't know if the overdrive's had service on it since it was manufactured. This thing's working perfectly. I think we've only done 1 oil change on it. It runs smooth. There's no issues. You can put in any gear. No juddering, nothing. It's perfect.
I've just got a warning that my battery is running low on my computer. I don't know how it can be. I'm plugged in. I don't know. Here, just a minute.
Wee you. Oh no.
At least I got some warning. My old computer, the distance between the warning and the shut off was about half a second. So anyway, I'm back up. All right. Anyway, okay.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Quick question. On a 76B, the panel that goes underneath the radiator from the front of the car, from the bumper basically back, mine's missing. Is that something I need to replace?
I don't think so. I've seen them with and without. They started putting those on when they changed the engine position, and the late model ones are real nice. They make it look real nice. It may have something to do with airflow, but if you've got no issues with heating, it's just a great big something else to worry about.
Okay, so I just got it in November. I don't know what it's going to do in the summertime. I was wondering if it was needed to direct airflow into the radiator and not let it bypass the radiator.
I don't think so. I've got my eyes closed. I can see the 77 through 80. I can't. The 75, 76s, they're always kind of drooping. I just can't close my eyes and see it.
But it's basically just that it just goes right above where the sway bar would be.
Yeah.
And it just that opening, it blocks that opening so that there's no airflow going through there. But you don't think it's that big a deal?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. Well, we're down to it. It's a 9:30. We've run a little over. What was our highest count there, Marty? What did you see? I should ask. Probably.
Hang on a second. Let me scroll back up.
John, I counted 246.
Oh man. All
right.
Yeah.
I had 245. I say we're in agreement.
All right.
That's the highest. That's the highest in a long time, I think.
Long time.
Highest
Yeah, I
in a
had
long time.
260 unique people.
All right. What's that, Marty?
260 unique people, because people come in and out. But
sure. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Hey,
that's a lot.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Don't forget to make the PayPal. I always forget that partway through. I mean to set a time. Anyway, Doug, what hat do you have tonight? Because I got one that's going to beat you.
Well, I'm John. Considering the weather, I'm going for practicality. So this is my hat. When I want to audition for the biography of Admiral Robert Peary, this will be what I'm wearing.
So today,
So
today at the shop, Quentin was there with his Uper hat. Looks just the same as that, but I think it was plaid. And John Clark said, "Oh, you ought to borrow Quentin's hat for tonight." We would have had the same hat if I'd followed him up on that, which I didn't. I should have. That would be a hoot. Instead, I brought mine. This is from fourth grade, Sherman Elementary School in Marshall, Michigan, when the Hartford fire insurance guy came through and had us all learn how to sing a little song, Junior Fire Chiefs Are We. I used to know most of the words to it. It all had to do with home fire safety. But this is the hat that I got in fourth grade. So you can see that it doesn't quite fit, you know.
John, I think a thimble would fit better.
Look at this from the Hartford Fire Insurance Company from probably 1958.
Wow.
Or something. This is probably worth something on eBay. I ought to be careful.
Yeah, that's good. Speaking of the freezing cold weather, Friday, a bunch of us from the Chicagoland MG Club, we took a weekend trip, an Amtrak trip to Michigan to go to the Detroit Auto Show.
Oh, very nice.
And there were a bunch of us. And coming back yesterday, well, let's put it this way. Instead of taking 5 hours, it took about 8 hours, largely because they announced in Battle Creek on the way back that all the Amtrak trains out of Chicago, it was frozen. No one could come. And according to the railroad regulations, they have crew changes. So the crew on our train couldn't work anymore. So we were stuck in Battle Creek. Someone suggested making a breakfast run out to Kellogg's, but that was not went over well. But anyway, so Amtrak got 4 coaches, bus coaches from Grand Rapids. So we got off the train, went in the Amtrak Battle Creek waiting room, and the buses were delayed because the conductor said there's a traffic jam. Now this is Sunday afternoon. Apparently there was an accident or something in Grand Rapids, and the buses finally arrived. So one bus was a local making the intermediate stops to Chicago, and the 3 others were express buses to Chicago. So we made it back instead of getting at 2 o'clock at 5 o'clock. And I suppose the best thing that happened was no one launched into a rendition of 99 bottles of beer on the wall, because that would have been unbearable, for 150 miles. So anyway, I believe the train actually went through your hometown. Or just just on the southern boundary of it, the track, I believe. So anyway, we made it back, and we had a good time, and was not too cold while we were there. It just got cold yesterday morning, and yesterday afternoon it was brutal. So, but we did that. We had a good time, and the swap meet is the 23rd of March, the Wheaton County Fairgrounds.
Yep, got it.
Oh wait, there's more.
There is? Is there still more?
There's more cold on the way.
Yeah.
I just I'm just talking to one of my regulars from California, and the ravages of age. Here it comes. Here comes Alzheimer's. I haven't a friggin' clue what I was going to say. Anyway,
you'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yes,
I call that chronic CRS.
The next time around, I'm going to be broadcasting from Gulf Shores, Alabama. So just offhand, yep. Let me take a look. Of course, the dates can always change like they did last week. No, I got one more this week. I got another one. I want to get us back on track. Maybe I'll do one again this coming Monday night on the 27th. That was my plan to get two in the month of January, and then I don't know about February. We'll see, or maybe I won't. I'm not sure. I got to talk to Marty. If you have ideas about what you'd like us to talk about, send me an email. That worked. Somebody sent me a note and said, "Hey, what about barn finds?" I said, "Hey, okay." So anyway, SUs are always fun, but unless Fred's got something else to talk about them, we can talk about distributors, talk about cylinder heads. We can
We're
talk.
replacing our windshield.
No, I'm not going to talk.
Nobody wants to do that.
No,
Let's
it's a
even talk
horrible,
about it.
it's a horrible, horrible job.
Tell me, my windshield's in our living room right now. I'm
Okay.
so glad Glory doesn't mind, but it won't be in there till February or March.
All right. Well, ladies
It's
and
even more
gentlemen,
fun when you start welcoming it as part of the family.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. We'll catch you in a couple of weeks or next week, hopefully.
or whenever the spirit moves. Absolutely.
You'll let us know.
I will. I'll let everybody know in plenty. Well, this next weekend, everybody get an email again because our birthday party's coming up on Saturday for the people in Michigan, northern Indiana, Illinois. Got some people coming up from the Chicago club. I know that people coming over from Windsor, Detroit club. I know that. But it is the middle of the winter, and it's if the weather's inclement, I know we won't have a whole lot of people there, even though it's my 50th officially, my 50th anniversary of being in the trading as University Motors. So.
Yeah, John, I was going to say, coming back on that coach yesterday, it was a little bit hairy driving on, or the bus driver on Interstate 94. Periodically, there'd be these signs, overhead signs, blowing snow ahead, and and that type of thing. And in fact, Amtrak, believe it or not, no trains out of Chicago until Wednesday.
Really?
Yeah, it's not record-breaking cold. It's pretty surprising. It's very cold, but it's not record-breaking. So no trains out of Chicago until Wednesday. I guess the switches are frozen, but yeah, we're driving. They had these snow squalls on Interstate 94. Around I don't know, maybe Paw or
Kalamazoo River Valley.
Blowing snow, reduced speed ahead. Slippery roads ahead. And when they saw that, everyone quit singing 99 bottles of beer on the wall and it got quiet. But
if it's snowing anywhere in the state of Michigan, it's snowing in Kalamazoo. Oh my gosh, they get so much snow there, a lot more than what we do. Anyway, it's 9:30, 9:35. It's been a great session, and I'm gonna begin to shut down here. So want to say goodbye to everybody.
Thanks,
It was fun,
Thank
John.
you, John.
Fred, thank you very, very much.
Good night, everyone.
Nice to see you, everybody, again. Thanks a lot. See you.
Oh, Rodolfo, I didn't even know you were on. Hey, I haven't seen you in a long time.
Oh, I saw carburetors. That's my stuff because I always suffer with that.
Okay. All right. All right.
Nice to see you, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, great. Wonderful. Pleasure to see you this time.
For me too. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. See you later.
All right.
Everybody stay warm.
Good night.
Yep. Well,
Good night. Thanks.
Good night. Thank you.
Alan,
Good night.
Batchelder, see ya. Yep. Oh, Rodolfo, I didn't know you were on. Oh my gosh. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. And whether it's next week or 2 weeks from now, safety fast.